Welcome, Ezzat. Today we want to talk about your experiences and your journey as in like how you identified a particular internship opportunity that you got
Yeah.
and why you got it and what are the lessons that you learned, what was the process that was involved, and
Yeah.
also if people could potentially map out your pathway as in like why were you successful in getting that internship and then like the lessons that came along with it and after that and now you're going back to school, so just talking about that, the journey, that process, that would be really nice. So if you could like if you give us like a highlight of like the 5 6 months that you've gone through in the past, that would probably be beneficial to other people. So yeah, feel free to introduce yourself and then we can continue.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Ender, for having me here. It's a pleasure, and it's funny that we took so long to plan this, and finally we are here. So a little background about myself. I did my first undergrad in chemistry with a minor in physics from the American University of Beirut. I lived there for 5 years. And then I did my second and third undergrad in French and mechanical engineering at DAL in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I started as a chemistry student, and I really didn't know what I was going. I was like into maybe graduate studies in chemistry, medical school, engineering. I was unsure, but because I really loved physical sciences, I loved the field of energy. This kind of drove me to pursue a career in engineering. And I still have one more year to graduate. And I recently finished my co-op with PepsiCo in Moncton. And I worked with the maintenance team. My co-op was in maintenance, and the main tasks that I was doing were autonomous maintenance and preventative maintenance. And if you want, we can talk about that in depth.
Or understand.
Sure. I don't want to go too technical during this interview, but if I'm free to talk about the technical aspects of it or about how I landed on this internship.
I think we can start with how you landed because we want to like hopefully like help out someone who wants to map out your path, right?
Perfect.
So
Sure.
just to like
Sure.
so that some people tend to be insecure about finding an internship. You would
Yes,
know that. You
yes.
probably were too, or
Absolutely.
maybe you know other people who were, right? So we want to like maybe somehow like kill that insecurity with like
Yeah.
we can do it. So yeah, that's the goal.
Absolutely. It is a very competitive market. It took me some time to get that internship. Um, I so if I had some advice for anybody, it is to know what they want and start investing in themselves and developing the skills that they need to get that certain job. So, for example, if I was planning to work at a construction company or in a job related to materials engineering, that will require some skills that are very different than the skills that I would need if I wanted to work in robotics or in artificial intelligence, right? And it would take me a few months, maybe a few years to develop the skills that are needed to go and work in robotics,
Yeah.
right? So knowing what you want, what kind of career you want, and trying to build the skills in that field are the first things that you want to do. At the end of the day, you want to apply for a certain company, for a certain job, and you want to have the skills that they want on your resume and not the skills that are needed for another job.
Yeah. So what did you do to get this particular job? So what
Yeah.
skills did you work on?
That's a good question. Before applying, right now I applied a few months before getting the job. More like a year and a half earlier, I was looking at the job postings and see what kind of skills they want. I During my university education, I have learned many skills, but guess what? There are many other skills that many jobs require that I did not learn during university. And I took the last summer and the last year and a half to try to acquire, to accumulate these skills. Some of them might be an extra language, an extra programming language, some extracurricular activities. And there's a lot of that I can mention to you if you want. For example, sadly, we engineering students are stereotyped to be nerds with cookie glasses, right? We can like study a book for 9 hours straight. but we're stereotyped also to be bad communicators,
Yeah.
very shy, introverts, and most of the times most of the jobs do not require a lot of technical skills.
I see.
They require communication. All they have is different teams that work on one project, and what matters the most is communication. You need to be approachable at work,
I didn't
right?
think that would be the case. Sorry to interrupt you, but I
That
didn't
was the
think
thing,
that would be
actually.
the case in
Yeah.
engineering jobs.
They did not ask for my grades, right? But things like Toastmasters, for example, have played a big role. Uh, Whenever my people that were interviewing me were looking at my resume, they never asked about the courses that I take. One of them asked me what my favorite course was. Most of them were like, "What is Toastmasters? Or what is this volunteering opportunity? Tell me about that."
Ah,
Right?
interesting.
So when they know that you come from a technical background, but have the communication skills, and that can be demonstrated in the interview, but before the interview, you need to have something on your resume that says,
Right.
I am not your typical nerdy, thick glasses engineering student, even if you were a nerd and had thick glasses, but still, you were a good communicator.
Right.
That's
Right.
an asset.
And I'm also guessing like maybe it would also depend. Like a thick classes, nerdy engineering person
Yeah.
might fit in certain circumstances,
Yes.
but that would be a highly like niche. But
True.
you probably are talking about like a more generalized sort of like work culture, work jobs or internships, right?
Yes.
Okay.
For the kind of job where there's basically 2 or 3 people working in one room and trying to build
Yeah.
a certain program,
Yeah.
that might be fine. But if you have a big company like the one where I was, and I had to communicate with a lot of people, and not all of them had the same educational background as
I see,
me.
yeah.
Some people from science, some people from
Yeah.
business, some people who did not study at all. And a typical nerdy engineering student with no communication skill that is very shy will find it very intimidating. I found it intimidating to talk to older people who had more experience than me and tell them that what they're doing is wrong, or it's a tough job, and communication was the key.
I mean, that's the same with my job too.
Yes.
My job is like heavily, it's project management slash product management.
Yes.
But it's not like I'm not working in a startup or like a IT company, right? I'm working for healthcare, but I still do that. But then it revolves around coordination, and coordination means you're talking to people. Because how are you coordinating if you're not talking to people? So yeah, okay, I see that. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So when you talk about this, like extracurricular skills or like having an advantage with like your ability to communicate with other folks and stuff like that.
Yes.
What difference did you see when you were on teams? Like, did you see you could like improve on something, or were you like, oh, I'm more comfortable here than like you would have been in a different setting? By that I mean like, was it easier to communicate in companies than like with like your fellow classmates and working on group projects? Like, what would you say?
In companies, there was definitely more communication than in classrooms or in group projects.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, in a group project, it is a couple of weeks worth of work and 3 or 4 people. And the results at the end were not as big and as important as working in a company. In a company, you're not working with 3 or 4 people. Sometimes you're working with 20. The responsibility is bigger, right? The consequences are more important. So definitely, communication is more important in companies. Something else, in school, you're working with peers. Most of the times, you're identical to the other students.
Yeah.
Same age, same program, same educational background. You live in the same city. While at work, you're talking to sometimes very different people, different age, different educational background, different skills. Communication is going to be more important there at work.
So I get it. Like on your resume or on your document that they were discussing, you were able to show that you participated in like Toastmasters group and like and then other sort of activities, extracurricular activities. But when it comes to like communicating within like a diverse range of skill sets, like what was like? Did you think were there any parts of the interview where you actually like showed them that specifically that maybe someone else could like learn because you just successfully got it. So maybe someone else could like, identify, oh, I could not only just like say that, but I could also like be actually a practitioner of that particular trait that you showed in the interview that led them to selecting you, and then you being able to communicate with seniors, VPs or exec or like managers or like people outside the organization, external stakeholders, like those words, internal stakeholders and that kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely. In interviews, most of the times they ask you about a case where you faced a conflict in work,
There you go.
problems. How did you use your skills to attempt to solve that problem? And what I did is that I brought up some of the conflicts that I faced with my group projects. I had a couple of big problems with some projects in school, and I was the one who pulled up the project and made sure that I made sure the conflict was reserved and everybody took a piece of the project and the project was eventually done. And they really love that kind of leadership because at work they face a lot of problems like that. So that they ask you about them, and that is the time to mention that.
So aside from that, when you were applying, like say like how, like other than like searching for like the job description and aligning your documents with it, what were the other like in hindsight, because especially you've done it, you got it, so like in hindsight, how did you get the interview, let alone like getting selected after the interview, like how did you get the interview, what do you think worked for you when you threw in your applications?
Yes. I would say definitely the DAL co-op office played a role in it. But other than that, it's basically looking at jobs that match my skill sets. So for example, it was if I was looking at other jobs that I matched 60% of the list of qualifications that were mentioned, and I applied to 100, probably I would be called to 7 or 8 interviews. While if I selectively chose jobs that I really, really matched, and I had the set of qualifications needed, and I applied for 100, I probably would be called to a 70 interview. So that would be the first thing, because you don't want to frustrate yourself and apply for 500 jobs and not be called in and think ill about yourself. And it's not about you. Simply, you're not the right person that they're looking for. And if you wanted to have the skills that make you eligible to apply for a bigger pool of jobs, that's not a bad thing. Sometimes some people go after specializing. They choose a very specialized set of skills that make them the best in a very narrow field of professions. And some people go for diversity, and I like that. I like diversity of skills. Learning a lot of things, learning very little things about everything rather than knowing everything about one thing. So if you want to apply for 500 jobs, but maybe plan before that to have the skills required for multiple disciplines. In my major, it would be HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and then materials, and then robotics. These are three, and then airspace. These are different fields, all under mechanical engineering, and they require different skills, right? And the best thing is, ahead of time, read the job description of some of the companies and try to make sure you have that before. And if you have all of them, chances are you will get called for an interview.
So in your particular case,
Yes.
what were the exact things that matched to your internship that you got?
Yes. The internship that I got was more of industrial engineering than mechanical. It was a lot of management, it was a lot of communication, zero technical. I applied zero technical skills that I learned in my courses. So it wouldn't be some of the programming languages that I have mentioned on my resume. It would be more the communication part.
I see. Okay. So
Yes.
like what you were saying earlier, so that was the part that stood out.
Exactly. exactly.
Interesting. Okay. And so when you were doing your wedding process, as in like where you should be applying, what was your strategy? Was it again as in like what you can do and what skills you have, or was it like, well, these are the ones that we have as options where we could apply, so I'm going to just apply to all of them? Or did you like actually cut down and like these are the only few ones that I'm going to apply? Or was it also around like your curiosity and interest?
Yes, it was definitely about my curiosity and interest.
Okay.
I did not mind applying for stuff that are a little bit further from the scope of my interest,
Mhm.
but I definitely followed my interest.
Okay.
Um, I mentioned that earlier. I don't like limiting my options. I like
Yeah.
to increase that. So before I applied the year earlier, I was trying my best to be as suitable as possible and as eligible as possible to as many options that I can. So geographically speaking, I did not limit myself to one place,
Okay.
at least
Okay.
all of Canada.
Okay.
I applied for Ontario, for the Maritimes, for Alberta, even a couple in Vancouver. And in terms of disciplines inside my, I definitely had some interest, and most of the jobs that I applied for were in a certain field inside mechanical engineering,
Yeah.
but that didn't mean that I did not apply for a couple of other ones that I kind of had some interest in.
Okay.
So I did narrow down stuff, but still tried to have some options outside.
Okay. Okay. I see. What did you see working for maybe your friends who were like in the same boat? Did you see? Did you notice something around there? Like
That worked out for my friends.
yeah, like who were in the same program as you or like were doing the same. But, yeah.
Yes, I saw a good success rate. So majority of the people around me were able to get some positions in some companies. Definitely, COVID has affected some, but for the most part, if you had the qualifications needed, majority of the people were able to find co-op
Yeah.
positions during their um, program during the third or the fourth year.
Did you also have like an option of doing like research
Yes,
or versus co-op or
yes.
okay.
It is an option in the co-op program. You
Okay.
can either do you can either work in a company, in an industry, or do
Okay.
a research in DAL or in other companies.
Yeah.
And many people who are interested to go to academia to do a master's or a PhD, they do research with a professor for four months. It's really great if you want to go to academia.
Right. Okay. And like, how did you like? Did you always knew what your direction is going to be, what academia versus like going to an industry?
No, I didn't.
You did not. Okay. So how did you decide?
Yes, I I I had a long it was a long journey for me. When I was a chemistry student, I said that at the beginning of the interview. One of my options was to go to academia in chemistry, to do a PhD in chemistry, and one of my dream jobs was to become a professor. So I really love communication. I love public speaking. I love standing on the stage and speaking. It's something that I really admire, and I wanted to become a professor. Um, I'm not exactly sure what happened, but changes have happened.
Yeah.
Circumstances, internal changes. My personality got a little different, and now I'm more of an industry person. So now I have no more interest in going to academia, but at some point in my life I did.
So when you were doing the program, like you already knew that you would go the
Yes.
internship route and get some industry experience.
By the time I started my engineering degree at Dow, I was very determined that I'm going to industry and not to academia. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about your friends? Is there anyone who ended up going to the thesis direction or not?
I don't personally know
Okay.
somebody. I know of some people who
Right.
did
Right.
that.
Okay.
I have a lot of friends who graduated with me in chemistry, and now they're doing PhDs
Okay.
and they're pursuing careers in academia or even in industry in R&D or something like that, in research and development.
So I guess the next question in my mind is, so what now? Like, I know you're going back to university
Yeah.
and you have another year. That's correct, right?
Mhm.
So you did your internship. So how many internships did you end up doing in your
I only
program?
did one.
You only did one. Okay.
Yes.
And is there a capping as in like how many you can do? Is there like a
Maximum is 4 in
you can do
mechanical,
four in
or
mechanical engineering?
3, sometimes 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you only did one. So, what do you think your outlook could look like, or where your mind is? Did the internship contribute to any sort of changes in your like attitude or understanding of the sector where you would want to go, or the companies you might want to work for?
Yes, the internship gave me a lot of insights. So
Mhm.
I know a lot about the industry. I know the importance of some skills on that make you employable. Uh, I learned a lot of things for
Mhm.
sure.
You would want to say, since you've already like gone through the program almost in the last year, someone who's going to join this program, and especially if it's like an international student, because you being sort of like having an international background, what would you like say to someone interested in mechanical engineering per se, like how to match your interest with your curiosity and like what the scope is, because that's
Mm.
what everyone asks when they're like doing a degree,
Yeah.
like when it comes to like especially like when their parents are pushing it, kids to go, it's like, oh, so what's the scope of this particular sector, right?
Yeah.
So like what would you want to say to like people who might want to start a similar program?
I think engineering is a great program.
Okay.
I am a big advocate for engineering. It doesn't really matter which one, because in work, most of the work or many work is interdisciplinary. So the people that I was working with were from industrial and electrical, sometimes chemical even, right?
I
Uh,
see.
that's a biased opinion because the place where I worked in is very interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
That would be different if you work in oil and gas or in airspace or
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
But many work is interdisciplinary, and an undergrad in engineering can open a lot of doors for you. You can go to academia,
Okay.
you can go to industry, you can go to business,
Mhm.
you can very easily shift career after engineering.
Right.
I know many people who were hired in the financial sector,
Interesting.
in banking, in hedge funds, who have engineering backgrounds because the skills you learn in engineering are very easily transferable.
Transferable.
Problem solving,
Yeah.
design, math, these
Uh-huh.
things are really applicable in business, applicable in academia, can easily go to do a PhD in physics or in chemistry. So I'm a big advocate for engineering. I think it's a great undergrad. It's a
Mhm.
great way to start your life.
So according to you, it's basically like almost like a tool that can open a bunch of different options for you, and you
Absolutely.
don't have to necessarily narrow down to any particular pathway because you could literally just like do your internships or thesis or whatever, finish your program, and then
Yes,
you can literally choose which sector you want to go to, and
absolutely.
many of them would be open to like taking you as a
Absolutely.
potential, employee. Okay, that's interesting. Well, is there anything else you would like to add regarding your journey? I know we just like it's not your whole journey, but we were just trying to focus on your like internship component and like pre-internship, like post-internship, that kind of phase. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I would like to say focus on computer, communication, public speaking, and on sports.
In sports.
Sports really help you stay focused.
Wow.
They say the good mind is the sound mind is in the sound body.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So if you have the good mental capacity, everything else is gonna be easier. So computer, communication, and make sure you're maintaining your body. That would be my advice.
Okay. And when you say computer, you mean like what exactly do you mean by that?
It's a big word.
Of course. Yeah.
Computer literacy. The minimum is Microsoft Word, right?
Right.
Being able to create documents, manipulate documents. That's the minimum,
Right.
and you can go as far as learning programming languages and stuff like that.
Okay.
I am not the perfect person with computers,
Yeah.
most of my work, my studies and my work were with computer. So being good with computers,
And I think what you're trying to say is like the documentation piece is big in the industry, like pretty much
yes,
wherever you go. I'm aware of that too.
yes,
So basically, like if you're like handy with a computer, essentially just like
yes,
basic applications like Microsoft Word or
like
like
Excel,
Excel and like just like
PowerPoint.
really basic application which you most likely should know
Yeah,
now because that's just how we operate as a society now. So then yeah, it's important because then documentation will be the key that will help you kind of like man jobs and like maintain those jobs because
yes,
they want to keep documents, and
exactly,
if you help them keep the documents, they'll keep you.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. So I guess we can end at this if that's
Perfect.
okay.
Thank you for having me. It was
Well,
great.
yeah, it was great learning about your experiences. Would you be open if people comment and like
Absolutely.
want to ask you questions
Sure,
so we can
absolutely.
bring those questions back to you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
this was Ezzat. We had a nice conversation. In future, we'll have more guests. We just try to identify certain people who have different diverse skills. In this case, Ezzat has like a mechanical engineering background, and so yeah, we'll have similar people with specific skills. Will match up to like the qualifications they have, the jobs they have found, the internships they have found, and like present it to you folks. And if that helps you guys learn about something else, that would be helpful. And if there's anything else that we can bring, please comment, and we'll try to identify those people in around this region, or at around in the industry around Halifax, Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada, maybe even within Canada, and maybe it will help you. So yeah, thank you for watching.